This video looks at distance, speed and time calculations. So if we start off with our distance, speed, time triangle, what we need to do is we need to make it a DST triangle. So D goes in the top, S and T both go in the bottom parts of our triangle. Now if we're calculating distance, which is the first thing that we want to be able to do, what we're going to do is we're going to highlight, or if you've got a triangle of your own, you can put your thumb over the variable that you want to find. And then, because we want distance, speed and time are both at the bottom of our triangle, so it means that we are multiplying them together. So we can rewrite the formula as distance, d, equals speed, s, multiplied by time, t. Now in the first example, we want to find the distance for this average speed and time interval. We've got a speed of 10 meters per second and a time of 30 seconds. Distance is the top of our triangle. It's d, which means that we're doing s multiplied by t to work out the distance. And that cancels the time out. So we're going to write the formula d equals s multiplied by t, and then we're going to substitute in our numbers. We've got a speed of 10 meters per second, and we've got a time of 30 seconds, and if we multiply them together, that gives us 300, and we need to make sure that we choose the correct unit, and the unit is meters because it's meters per second for the speed, so our answer is 300 meters. Now in the second example, we want to calculate the distance travelled. 60 miles per hour is the average speed and 20 minutes is the time. So again, we're looking for distance, and that's the top of our triangle D, so that means D equals S multiplied by T. So we're going to write down our formula, D equals S times T. Now before we can do any substituting, we need to make sure that our units are the same. You can see that our speed is in miles per hour, and our time is in minutes. They have to be the same unit before we can multiply them in order for them to cancel each other out. So the easiest thing to do is to convert our 20 minutes into a fraction. And we know that there's 60 minutes in an hour, so 20 minutes will be 20 over 60, which we can simplify to 1 over 3. Now we can substitute in to our equation. So d equals 60 multiplied by a third, and if we're multiplying by a third, then we're multiplying by the top and dividing by the bottom, so it means 60 divided by 3. And that means that the distance is going to be 20. Now we need to choose the correct unit. If we look at our speed, it's in miles per hour, so our distance will be in miles, so our distance is 20 miles. Now if we want to calculate speed, then we're going to be choosing one of the bottom sections of our triangle, and that means that we're going to be doing dividing rather than multiplying. So this time we're highlighting the S for speed, and you can see that we've got a fraction line between D and T, which means that we're dividing D by T. So to work out the average speed, we're doing the total distance divided by the total time. Or we can write it as a fraction as d over t. So we want to find the average speed for this trip. The distance is 15 kilometers, the time is 3 hours. So speed is at the bottom of our triangle. That means we're doing d divided by t in order to calculate our average speed. So we're going to write the formula s equals d over t as a fraction, or we could write it as s equals d divided by t. And then we're going to substitute in our numbers. So we've got a distance of 15 over a time of 3, or we can write it as substituted into the second version as 15 divided by 3. And 15 over 3 is 5, and 15 divided by 3 is also 5. Now we need to choose the correct unit for speed. You can see the distance is in kilometers and the time is in hours. So our speed is going to be kilometers, and then that's per the time. And our time's in hours, so our unit is going to be kilometers per hour. So the average speed for this trip is 5 kilometers per hour. In this example, we want to calculate the average speed to travel 121 miles in 5 hours and 30 minutes. So again, speed is at the bottom of the triangle, which means we're dividing distance by time. So we're going to write down our equation, s equals d over t, or again we can write it as s equals d divided by t. To the question, we can find our knowns and unknowns. So we don't know what s is, so that's what we're trying to find out. D from the question is 121 miles, and our time is 5 hours and 30 minutes. Now we must have this in just hours. We know that 30 minutes is half an hour, so we can rewrite the time as 5.5 hours. Now, once we've got these in the correct format, we can substitute them in, and we've got 121 over 5.5, or in the second version, 121 divided by 5.5. And this is going to equal, when we put it into our calculator, 22, and then we need to choose the correct unit. So this time we have miles and hours, so it's miles per hour because we're dividing miles by hours, and we write that as mph. So our average speed is 22 miles per hour. Now the final thing we want to be able to calculate is time. So again, we refer back to our DST triangle. This time we're blocking off t for time, and again you can see the fraction line, meaning that we're dividing distance by speed. So the equation or formula is t equals d divided by s, or we can write it as time equals distance over speed, t equals d over s. In this example, we want to find the time it takes for this journey. The distance is 80 miles and the speed is 40 miles per hour. And we want to work out the time. So you can see that time is at the bottom right of our triangle, and we're going to work out time by doing distance divided by speed. So if we write the formula, we've got t equals d over s, or we can write it as t equals d divided by s. Now we're going to substitute our values in. Our distance is 80 miles, our speed is 40 miles per hour, or we're going to do 80 divided by 40. And that gives us an answer of 2. Now we need to work out what our units are. Our units are the time part of our speed, which is hours. And so the time it takes for this journey is going to be 2 hours, when the distance is 80 miles and the speed is 40 miles an hour. Now in this example, Mandy the mouse is running at an average speed of 3.6 meters per second across an 8-meter living room. How long will it take her to get from one side to the other? So we want to know how long, that's time, and that means that we're doing distance divided by speed. So let's write the formula. That's t equals d over s, or as I said before, we can write it as t equals d divided by s. Now let's find our knowns and unknowns. So we're trying to work out t because we're looking for how long. D equals 8 meters, and our speed is 3.6 meters per second. So we're going to substitute those values in, and that gives us 8 over 3.6, or we can write it as 8 divided by 3.6. And if we put that into our calculator, we end up with 2.22 recurring. And we need to then round it, and we're going to round it to the nearest second, which gives us 2. And because our speed's in meters per second, our unit of time is going to be seconds. So we can either write it in full or write it as 2s.